The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. It is yet another edition of The Big Issue. And of course, I hope you had a very wonderful weekend. Well, for the big issue of the day, you say the APC Congress is held last Saturday and the issues arising from the exercises. And of course, with me here in the studio to actually take on the big issue, our in-house analyst, Chibuzo Kaibe.
Thank you.
Tunde Oguntola.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, I am your regular host. George Agba is the name. And of course, to the big issue of the day. Last Saturday, the governing All Progressive Congress held its state congresses across the states of the Federation. And of course, the Congress is turned out to be violent, characterized by protest and boycotts. And of course, it was a replay of what happened during the World Congresses of the party. And of course, without wasting much of our time, Chibuzo, let's just quickly go into the issue because at least you were all witness to what happened last Saturday. And of course, look at this protest and the rest. What could you actually say about the exercise generally?
Speaking generally, what happened or what we witnessed on Saturday was not unexpected. At least for me, it was not unexpected because it has built up. What we saw was a build-up of the unresolved issues that started or that came to the fore with the world and local government congresses. Perhaps the inability of the party to really sort out tensions and disagreements among party leaders in states manifested, of course, was always going to manifest in the way it has done at this final stage before the national convention. It is not unexpected again because this stage of last Saturday is the final stage before you get into how the candidates would emerge by 2023. And so it was expected that this was going to be much more intense than what we saw
At the World
at the World and Local Government Congress. So it's absolutely no surprise for me that it will come to this point. And if you look virtually across states, you could perhaps it was less pronounced in states that had, how do I characterize this now? States where you have less ambitious people occupying other government offices. You had less of that. But in states where you had ministers who are also posturing for 2023, you saw the tension to be much more there than in other states. But it's absolutely no different from what I expected. And to that extent, I think it was expected that you have this kind of tension.
Yes, in Rivers, Senator Magnus Abe's loyalists boycotted the Congress. And of course, it was gathered that the names of the senator and his loyalists were not on the delegate list for the Congress. In Bauchi, two APC chairmen emerged. And in Lagos, we had almost about 3 parallel congresses. The one by the camp of former governor Kim Ambode. We had another one that was held by another faction called Lagos for Lagos. And of course, we had another one that the governor was involved. And of course, in places like Osun, Para, Abia, and Niger, and in Enugu, it was multiple congresses all the
Stacked
way.
up to Congress.
I'm telling you. And then in Ogun, there was violence. Government suspected to be drugged invaded the venue of the Congress. We shooting sporadically. At the end of the day, most of the party people there had to scamper for safety. I think the idea was to disrupt. And of course, what do you think would be the impact of the ripples? Violence, protest, and boycott left behind by the Congress and its implication on the party ahead of the 2023 elections. Today.
Thank you, Josh, for that question. The congresses really unveils so many things that some of us knew before now. Especially, it shows that our political parties in the country are structurally weak. Political parties in the country tends to do their thing their own way, full of greed and the need and want for an individual to take it all. This, to a large extent, shows that the foundation of Nigerian democracy is still faulty. This is equal to the fact that if we cannot have internal democracy within a party, how can such political party rule the nation? If within the APC ranks there are issues, how can they govern Nigeria properly? For purpose to be achieved, there is need for cohesion. There's need for unity. People have to work in harmony to achieve success. But when the need for money, greed, overrules this cohesion, we find ourselves where we are today. And this, to a large extent, shows that our politicians are too ambitious. They need power not for their use. They need power for self-aggrandizement, to enrich themselves and their family, to go on tours, to enjoy the best of life at the expense of others. We all know that in Osun State and Ogun, there were shootings. Do you know what it takes at the current state in Nigeria to convince someone to pick up gun, to go to the streets and be shooting in the name of politics? That's to tell you that they've paid these young men very well. That yes, they can pick up gun to go to the streets. And mind you, the president has ordered that anybody that is carrying gun should shoot that site. But they don't care about that. So they've actually collected money for their life and they can easily go to the streets. No, this is very sad. We need to get it right. I'm not here not talking about just the PDP or APC. I'm talking about all political parties in the country. There must be cohesion. There must be unity for us to achieve.
Thank you, Tunde. At least, just like you rightly said, you see, this Congress last Saturday was like a replay of what had happened in past congresses of the governing or progressive Congress. Like in 2019, the same thing happened. And about that, the question now is why is it that a party that said it was coming to make a difference, it was coming to do what PDP has failed to do for 16 years, it was coming to change the political tide, and And of course, to bring the needed change. It's the same party that is falling deep into the same thing it was accusing PDP as a party of. Chibuzo.
Well, it's safe to say now that what they said then was for the sake of getting power. It's always easy to pontificate, but when it comes to, materializing or practicing what you preach, it becomes a different ball game altogether. So as for all of the talk about doing things differently from what was done in the past is mere talk, going by what we have seen now. Because it does appear as if they are not different from what we have seen in the past. They've not acted differently from what we've seen in the past. But I think it's critical also to look at the reasons why the tension, because of this tension. I think it's important to really dissect it and look at it critically. And why it appears as if, we are seeing an almost equal force in the quest to acquire party structure. Now, if you look at some of the states, or most of the states, you tend to see that some of the actors seem to be operating from different points of power perception. What do I mean? You have governors on one end in most states, and incumbent ministers on the other end. So
just like Kwara.
In Kwara you have that. In
Lagos.
Osun you have that. In
Lagos State.
in Lagos you have that. Yes.
Mhm.
In Ogun you have that. Maybe not so much of ministers. Most all of the states, but you see people, politicians,
Some other big wigs of the
yes,
party.
who have a strong presence, if you will, and can almost boast to have as much access to the villa as the governors.
The governor himself.
For instance, in the case of Ogun,
And Kwara perhaps.
in the case of Kwara, you have a minister, an influential minister, if you
Very
will.
strong one.
Yeah. Then in Ogun, you have a former governor who brands himself, or who brags, let me not say brag, who would necessarily come off as one who has direct access to the president. And I'm talking of Senator Amoso, currently in the Senate. So you see these actors coming from a point of whatever influence you think you have as a governor, I can match you influence for influence. After all, I have the same access to the national as you do have. And so you can see why the tussle is so intense and nobody appears to want to give grounds. And that puts the party leadership, who ought to be the arbiter in all of this, in a very tight spot. Because now you have to deal with two very influential forces in the states. And so it's the dilemma of perhaps not just a ruling party, but a party in power, trying to ensure that it keeps all its members together going into the 2023 election. Because in its mind, it will be thinking, okay, we might not necessarily have the Buhari influence anymore going into that election. We might have it to the degree that, okay, fine, he's a president and he will want to intervene. But if you look at it also, how well has the president done in intervening in party
And of course,
disputes?
this is even the reason why most people say the APC is having it so hard, because the president, who is supposed to be the leader of the party, is not living up to his billing, because unlike under the PDP under Obasanjo, he won't dare try. At least the president will call you to order. Now most of all these party bigwigs, we are afraid because they know what will befall them if they are completely sidelined or
Exactly. And so
voted out of the political.
and I think that is the dilemma the party leadership faces at the moment. Because if you look at the previous interventions made by the villa, it comes off as if nothing actually changes. We can see what played out in the case of Kano. Even when the president tried to intervene, it still didn't work out. We saw what happened in the case of Edo. Even when the president tried to intervene, it still didn't work out. You saw all the interventions, all the reconciliation committees set up by the party, the Tinubu intervention, the other Baba's intervention from Oshun, Bisi Akande's intervention. And now we are seeing there's a new one again. I've forgotten the most recent one, who has been called to intervene, at the level of reconciliation. And we still saw all of these actors, still trying to grandstand and hold, their own. So it's a really tough situation for the party leadership, especially because you would expect that all sides, both sides, want to play their best cards. Because by 2023, they expect that most states will have their governors out. So it's more like a transition election. And so they want to play their best hand, knowing that with this, some of these states might not enjoy incumbency, apart from a few states, maybe like Oshun. But beyond that, it will be tough trying to call these party leaders together at this point. And so it's to be very interesting to see how the party leadership handles this, particularly as they're going into a national convention.
Well, let's just quickly take a short break. But before we do that, we will actually implore our viewers to actually contribute in shaping the conversation on the big issue. And of course, you have always done that. And of course, as we come back from break, we expect that your comments will begin to trickle in. And of course, we will all be set to entertain them. We'll be back shortly.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Welcome back. We are still on the big issue in Leadership Podcast. And of course, the big issue of the day is the APC congresses and matters arising. Today, it seems that while some problems of the APC have been solved, some keeps bringing up. And of course, most Nigerians believe that most of the crisis in the party is what led to the protests, the boycotts, and the violence in states last Saturday. And of course, these particular congresses, in short, the congresses, were supposed to be a litmus test for the party to show how stable the party had become after the Oshomole years. But there seemed to be no difference. Has anything changed?
Well, if you say the party congress ought to be a litmus test for the party, well, we are not out of place. This is equal to the fact that you have to, like, they say charity begins at home. And a very popular adage. So this shows that the APC has finally tend to show themselves in the public sphere. However, the whole Congress shows that in Nigeria we have strong men, not strong institutions. The tussles during the Congress simply shows that these men are perhaps stronger than the party when you cannot even adhere to or follow the line with the sitting governor, which tends to be the head of the party in the state. You feel you can do your thing yourself. of course, there will be crisis in such party. You believe the governor is doing his own, I can also do how. Yes, you feel you are a godfather, the governor is a godfather. All this shows that the foundation of our democracy must be treated. How can we have a democracy when we don't have democrats? People who cannot follow the rules of the game, people who feels they can use force to acquire power.
But I think why it's happening like that, Tunde, is that most people believe that Nigeria had been gradually drifting into a one-party state. Because most of the people you see in APC now are people who defected from the PDP. Unlike before, where you have a party and there's the opposition party, the opposition will just be doing their own thing, and then the ruling party is there. Most of the politicians in APC are the campees from the opposition PDP. And you say there will always be clash. That is why you will now have a former governor who's trying to square up with a sitting governor, a minister trying to show a governor that he is in charge here.
Well, if someone like Femi Fani-Kayode can join APC today, you can know that any politician can join APC. We all know how Fani-Kayode was insulting Buhari without missing words, calling on soft or unquotable names. Today is back, snapping pictures, attending parties with them. We all see how a sitting governor in Zamfara State left the PDP, has joined APC. However, it takes only God grace for Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki still saying, I won't go back to APC. I know he has been lured and he keeps thinking about his daily, maybe he will come back to APC, but it's feeling like, okay, he got the mandate from PDP. APC is a party at the center. They feel like, okay, there is this influence. If the president is from that party, can as well use this influence to make things work out for them. And that's the simple reason. Because they believe that the institution itself cannot work where we have strong men, not strong institution, where they feel the confidence on the electoral body is not very high. Because if it is, you don't need APC and PDP to contest an election. Why can't you contest an election from YPP and still win? If you believe, yes, you can get this right. So these issues keep coming up, shows there is need for the nation to strengthen its institution and not the men.
Yes, that thing you said has just reminded me, because most people are saying that why the APC keeps suffering this crisis, the unresolved crisis, is because of the inability of the party to actually elect members for some of its institutions, like the BOT. The BOT has not been constituted by the party. You know, the BOT is made up of elders in the party who, at the end of the day, when as politicians they find themselves, the elders will come, they'll sit down. This is not the way to go about this. But it's not there. You know, that is why you see the Cold War within the party tends to be consuming the party. How can the party wriggle out of this kind of situation ahead of the 2023?
Well, I don't know how the party is going to do it. Number one, the party has a constitution. Now, the whole idea of a constitution is to create a direction on how the party should be managed. If the party has provided for certain organs of the party to be constituted, the only way you can justify whatever leadership is in place by time is that what is spelled out in the constitution is heeded to. Now, there have been complaints about the concept of a caretaker committee within the party and how long we should manage affairs of the party. That concern is there. That is number one. Number two, there is a fundamental complaint about the way the last party leadership was put out. So people are still grieving over that. Has it been properly addressed? Well, your case is as good as mine. Number three, Now, there is a perception that the merger arrangement has not been fully cemented. What do I mean by that? The constituent parts that make up the party, the merger arrangement. You have the ANPP, the CPC, the ACN, a part of ABGA. It does appear as if that there's a edging out of other constituent parts from the formation arrangement, such that now you only have the CPC managing fully the affairs of the party leadership, and even at the presidency level, the CPC affair. So these are perhaps perceptions that are there. Whether or not they are valid or not requires a second look by the party administration to see how they can take care of some of these issues, because it shows you these issues will always come up, and it is for that reason that series of reconciliation committees set over time have still not been able to address some of these fundamental problems. And so when you don't have some of this, when you still have some of these things lingering, you're always going to have these problems. Now, that does not take away the fact that politicians will always scheme for power. So some will tell you, even if you have all these issues resolved, being humans and being people who want to acquire power, and I think that is what Tunde pointed out. They need to have Democrats, and have people who are not stronger than the institution. So even when you have some of these problems properly addressed, you still have people who want to undermine the system just to get power. So it is a challenge, not just for APC, but I think for the political system of Nigeria. Our political culture has to, evolve in a way that people would see the collective. We subsume their personal interest into the collective interest. Because at the end of the day, all of this thing has to be about how you produce a party that produces quality governance. But if you have these sets of actors, stay focused on how to just, get power and control power for personal interests, you come to where we are at the moment. But again, there was a point you made earlier about the new PDP people, the PDP defectors into the party, being in the fore of some of the crises they are facing there. At the risk of holding brief for them, if you look at where you have some of these major issues, you will discover that they are between party members of even within of people from the same party lineage. What by that I mean, for instance, if you look at Ogun State, they had a governor who just finished under the platform of the APC, having a problem with the governor that is from APC. From APC. So there's no new PDP, there's no PDP defector in the equation. If you go to Osun State, if you go to Osun State, it's the same scenario. Two people from within the ACN family battling it out. If you go to Kwara, it's almost the same scenario as well. Perhaps it might be a case of CPC and ACN.
Just like in Delta State,
in Delta State, the Kayamo, yeah, you might have a bit of the Deputy Senate President. You might have a bit of new PDP, but we didn't just move from the PDP directly into the APC. There was he won under the Labour Party, so you can recall, before he defected to the APC. So you see a situation where the fight is even more intense within people who come from the same political background, if I might use that expression. So it really shows that there is a need for the party, and I really wonder how the party leadership is going to handle this. I really wonder how the party leadership is going to handle this. But if they don't handle it well, the much anticipated implosion might just happen within the APC if it is not properly handled.
You're right. Presently now there are two camps in APC, if you notice. Even in the aftermath of this Congress, those who are praising the Congress as being transparent are those who are in support of the Buni-led caretaker committee. And then the ones crying foul are the ones who have initially had insisted that the Buni-led committee had overstayed its welcome and is now operating against the constitution of the party. So that now, don't forget that during the Ondo State governorship election matter at the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court justices threw a jab on the Buni-led committee, questioning its legality or otherwise to remain. You understand? Now, with this Congress is going, and the way the matter is going, it's bringing up enemies, aggrieved party members, disgruntled party members. There's this likelihood that some members of the party might be forced to go to court again. And when they go, they will not even go hang. It won't be a matter that is arising from another matter, just like the Ondo governorship election. This will be the case. In the event where the court begins to void most of these congresses, what happens?
Well, there's no. I think that might be the last resort for a number of them, because it does appear as if they have tried all they can within the party mechanism to see how this problem can be resolved, and it appears they are being shut out. And if I may, it's usually the case of who do you heed to, the governor or the other stakeholder? Who is more strategic for the party? Who do they consider first? Sitting governor, or so
you and I know there is a governor that will definitely consider.
So most times when it comes to this point, the party has to take a stand. In taking that stand, you will only expect that they are aggrieved will do either of two things. Either you fight it out within the party, you defect,
or you go to court.
And now the party is saying whoever goes to court will be penalized. The president made that very clear that all cases should be withdrawn. But even at that, we still saw people go to court, even after the president made that very important statement last year in the course of dissolving the Oshomole-led NWC.
Yeah.
The point was very clear that people shouldn't take the party to. The president said it. The NEC emphasized it. But even after then, we still saw party members going to court to challenge some actions by the party leadership. So, back to your question, it is not unexpected. It is expected that people will go to court on this one. People are going to, because they have nothing to lose at this point. It appears a case of what else do I have to lose? I've been shut out on all fronts. And I don't seem to trust the party leadership to afford me the kind of justice I want.
And besides, he that is down needs fear no more for.
Exactly. So what do I stand to lose? Let me go into the battle, gun blazing. That's an expression now. I don't mean they should go violent in any way. But let me just go into this and take my chances. I just might be lucky. But again, we saw how the legal abracadabra went when the issue of the legality of the Boni committee came up, and how the whole thing was at the funny legal tricks that played out. Maybe this time, if somebody gives it a shot directly, you might see something different, but there's no telling.
Well, that is the much we can take for today's edition of The Big Issue. Thank you for keeping tab with us out there. And of course, I'll thank our in-house analysts for doing a very wonderful job here. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of The Big Issue. Have a nice day.